Hello and welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we are going to look at filling out a table of the conversions between decimals, fractions, and percentages. Instructors love using the tables because it's a way of actually creating a lot of work to do in a very, very organized array of numbers. Before we get started filling out the table, I just want to review how we convert between the three forms. For a decimal to a percent, we multiply by 100% or move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Percent to decimal, we divide by 100% or move the decimal point 2 places to the left. A fraction to a percent, we multiply by 100% over 1, and then we simplify the fraction. Percent to fraction, we divide by 100% or put the percent over 100%. Then the percent signs cancel, and then we would also simplify the fraction if we can. For a decimal to a fraction, we read the number mathematically. The place the smallest non-zero digit is in becomes the value of the denominator. So tenth means over 10, hundredth means over 100, thousandth means over 1,000, etc. And then simplify the fraction. Fraction to decimal, set up the long division of numerator divided by denominator. So that's denominator goes outside the little division-y house thing, and the numerator goes inside. Usually with these types of conversions, we would include a decimal point because we almost always have to deal with decimals with these, and then we would just add a couple zeros as we go. Okay, so let's get started. Here we have this beautiful table. You're like, yeah, this won't be too much work. It is a lot of work though, because each row has two different calculations. The good news is that you can use whichever, so once you convert the percent to the decimal, whichever one you think is easier to convert to a fraction, you get to pick which one. So it is kind of nice. In the previous examples, I really tried to stick to whatever it said, even if I could have used a shortcut. But here in the table, let's use all the shortcuts that we possibly can. Okay, let's start with 92%. To convert to a decimal, we move the decimal 2 places to the left, 1, 2. And the equivalent decimal will be 0.92. Converting to a fraction, it doesn't matter which one because the percent, 92%, means 92 over 100. The decimal, 92 hundredths, means 92 over 100. Either way, we're looking at 92 over 100. Now you might be saying, oh no, what is she doing? She just totally missed the box that it's supposed to go in. I put it off to the side so we could simplify. Because 92 and 100 have a common factor of 4. We're going to divide both by 4. 92 divided by 4, okay, 100 divided by 4 is 25. There we go. 92 divided by 4 is 23. I clearly don't have a calculator right in front of me. And so the equivalent fraction would be 23 out of 25. This is a nice one to know because 25 is a common denominator for like quizzes. And if you get 23 points out of 25 points, you might be wondering, well, what is that? What percent is that? Did I pass? Did I get an A? And now we know, sure, if you get 23 out of 25, you get a 92%. Well done. Kudos to you. The next row, so I'm going to number these. This is row 1. In row 2, we're given the decimal 56 hundredths. Whichever one you want to do, if you like converting to percent first, awesome. To convert to the percent, we're going to multiply by 100, which will move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and we get 56%. For the fraction, just like with the one right above it, whichever one makes more sense to you, 56%, 56 hundredths, either way is 56 over 100. I must have a thing for multiples of 4 because again, we can divide these both by 4. 100 divided by 4, I just did it, it's 25. 56 divided by 4 is, I think it's 14. And we end up with 14 over 25. So this one, if you earn 14 points out of 25, you just barely didn't pass. So you got more than half the material, but you still have some work to be done. And that's okay. You can do it. I believe in you. Okay, row 3, we're given the fraction 7/20. Which one do you like better? Do you like converting to percents first, or do you like converting to decimals first? If you can use a calculator, probably converting to decimals will be a little bit nicer. If you don't, I think converting to the percent will be the nicer of the two options. So I'm going to start with the percent. I'm going to take 7 over 20, and I multiply by 100% over just a denominator of 1 just to create the fraction. I like to simplify before I multiply. 20 goes into itself once, and it goes into 100 5 times. Once I have those denominators of ones, I can just focus on the numerators. 7 times 5 is 35, and then this was a percent. I get 35%. And then the equivalent decimal, well, I'm definitely going to use that percent to convert to the decimal. I divide by 100%, or I move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and I add the leading 0. So I haven't addressed this yet. I'm going to address it now because all 3 that we see so far have that leading 0. I recommend putting the leading 0 because it makes it very clear that it's a decimal. We wouldn't ever write a whole number. Like you wouldn't say, I am 19 years old. That would be really weird and people might look at you kind of funny. You would just say, I'm 19. So we put the 0 just to really emphasize that there is a decimal there. It is optional. I highly recommend it. And this brings us to row 4. Row 4, we have 2/3. This is another one. It's probably the most common repeating decimal that we have, one of the two. If you know it, awesome. You can probably just fill it in. If you don't, let's go through the steps. So I'll do percent first. I'm going to take 2/3. I'm going to multiply by 100% over 1. And then I'm like, oh no, I can't simplify because 3 and 100 only have a factor of 1 in common. I multiply straight across and I get 200 over 3%. Well, that's not helpful, right? The point of percents is that it makes it very clear what we're talking about. And if I said 200 over 3%, you would look at me like I had 7 heads. And that's fair. You should. That's weird. Let's convert it to a mixed number. And to convert it to a mixed number, we would take the denominator and put it outside, take the numerator, put it underneath. I don't need to add the decimal because what I'm concerned about is what the remainder is. 3 goes into 2 0 times, 3 goes into 26 times, minus 18. 20 minus 18 is 2, bring down the 0. 3 goes into 26 times, that's 18. Oops, I see this already, the pattern is just right there. But what I want is I want this remainder. And the way we write this mathematically, we don't put R2, that's not what we do. This is the whole part, we have 66, and then we take the remainder and we write it as a fraction over the divisor. So 66 and 2/3% is the equivalent of 2/3%. And just like I mentioned in the last video, or whatever I had the 1/3, this is the only percent where just the fraction, the 2/3, is equivalent to the fraction that it represents. This is it. So 1/3 and 2/3, those are the only two. Nothing else will have that adorable little pattern there. Okay, now to convert to a decimal. So I didn't do myself any favors by just leaving everything in fraction form, but I can use the 3 into 200. I can just kind of build off this to get the decimal. Now, you might notice I have a repeating pattern. This is just going to be a string of 6s. So I'm just going to add a few more. Whee! And then it doesn't tell me where to round because everything else is a hundredth. I'll just round to the nearest hundredth. Now, this is the percent. So 66.6 repeating percent. To convert to a decimal, I would divide by 100. Where am I going to write that? So the decimal, I'm going to take my 66 point bunch of 6s repeating percent. I'm going to divide by 100, moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. And then I get 0.6 and then a string of 6s. We'll round to the nearest hundredth. So this one in the thousandths place tells this one in the hundredths place to bump up because it's bigger than 5. And we would get 0.67 is our decimal. If you wanted to be mathematically accurate, you could do 0.6 with the little repetend bar over it. I think 0.67 is sufficient. Okay, and last but not least, 0.5%. We made it to the last one. I'm going to change the color just because I did a lot of work here and I want to make sure we know which one I'm referring to. Okay, I've selected a nice red. Let's see. I like going to decimal, right? So going to decimal, we're dividing. We're moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. 1, 2. Whoops. I have a gap. I fill in the gap with a 0. I put my leading 0, then the 2 that are in between the decimal point and the 5. And my equivalent decimal is 0.005. As a fraction, now that could be kind of awkward. I would not use the percent in this case because that would be 0.5 over 100, that's a complex fraction, I would use the decimal. That's 5 thousandths. That's better. 5 thousandths. That's 5 per 1,000. And then I want to simplify before I put it in the table. I'm going to divide by 5 over 5. And I get 1 over 200. This would be 1 over 200. And that makes sense because 0.5%, that's half a percent. So 1% is 1 out of 100. This is half that. That would be 1 out of 200. I like it. It checks. Anyway, the table is now completed. Thank you for following along with me. And thank you for stopping by.